Today we're going to talk about a temporary buy down, or it's also called a 2-1 buy down. Guys, these are coming back into popularity with mortgage rates ticking up over the last 3 weeks. And it's super important to understand how these work because there's a time to use them. There's definitely a time not to use them. But real quick, first, guys, I'm a licensed loan officer. If you haven't subscribed, please click subscribe below or hit the like button. All right, let's just jump into it. Temporary buy downs. What do they do for a home buyer? A temporary buy down lowers the monthly payment that a buyer pays for the first 2 years. Now, we're talking about a 2-1 buy down here. There are other versions, but let's stick to 2-1 to keep this simple. A 2-1 temporary buy down is going to keep or lower the buyer's mortgage payment temporarily for the first 2 years. So how does it work? Well, let's use an example rate of 6.5%. On a 2-1 buy down, the buyer's payment in year one is based off of a rate of 4.5%. And then in year two, the buyer's payment is based off of a rate of 5.5%. In year three, the payment is then based off of that full rate at 6.5%, and it remains at that full rate payment for the rest of the loan. So how does this happen? How do you get a discount in the first 2 years? Well, like we all learn in econ, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So somebody's paying for it. Technically, buyers are allowed to pay for these, but I'm going to show you why you don't ever want to do that, guys. The cost of a temporary buy down is equal to the exact dollar amount that temporary buy down saves you. So let's say a temporary 2-1 buy down saves you $15,000 over the first 2 years. That's a realistic number, by the way. It just depends on your loan amount and the interest rate. But if the temporary buy down saves a buyer $15,000, then at closing, somebody needs to pay $15,000 for that buy down. That money goes and sits in a fund or an escrow account. And every month through those first 2 years, the full monthly mortgage payment is subsidized by the appropriate amount from that $15,000 that was paid up front. Now, if you're the buyer, here's why you don't want to do a temporary buy down that's self-funded. You're going to pay for your savings up front. So you're going to pay $15,000 today to then save $15,000 over the first 2 years. You're far better off leaving that money somewhere accessible, maybe earning even a small rate of interest. It's going to do you a lot better than sticking in an account. However, if a seller is willing to pay the temporary buy down, it's worth considering. You really want to do a deep dive on this, though, with your lender, because let's just use round numbers, guys. If you have $15,000 savings in the temporary buy down, and the seller says, yeah, I'll cover that. Well, we won't cover your closing costs, though. Well, what if your closing costs, what if it's a big loan amount and the closing costs are $15,000? They're just moving money around. So you want to make sure you look at the totality of the agreement and work that through with your lender. I just had a really good example of this, and which is what made me wanted to share this video, actually, guys. The borrower had 3% seller concessions on a $700,000 purchase. So that's $21,000 in seller concessions. We analyzed looking at a permanent rate buy down where the borrower used the funds from the seller to pay for their closing costs and then the remaining funds to buy their rate down, or we looked at a 2-1 buy down and we crunched numbers to figure out the best strategy. For this particular buyer, it made more sense to do the 2-1 buy down. However, the caveat is, and always is, with a temporary buy down, guys, you're banking on and you're betting that the market will come down, meaning that mortgage rates will drop sometime before the end of year two. Why? Because you want to refinance into a lower permanent rate, so you never get to that third year, that full rate. So there's no guarantee with these buy downs. That's why you want to talk to a mortgage lender. Let's talk about some of the economic conditions. Where are rates headed? What do we think long term? But I can tell you it's never a guarantee. So a 2-1 buy down is always a bit of a risk because you're going to get the discount and pay less in the first 2 years, but that third year, you're going to go to that full rate. The other option is to do a permanent buy down, and had you bought the rate down permanently, you'd be at a lower rate, but it would be for the entire 30 years of the loan. So it's really important to analyze this. But really, the idea here, guys, I want to get you to understand how these temporary buy downs work. They are not free, okay? The seller should pay for them for you to even consider this. If the seller is not paying for it, or your agent, the agent can pay for it. But if you're the one paying for any of it, it's off the table. It's just paying now to save later, which is a horrible money move. So talk to your loan officer. Guys, we do consultations like this with our clients all the time. We're here to answer questions. They're no cost consultations. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd love to help you understand the benefits, the costs, and just when it makes sense to use a temporary buy down. Guys, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen.